Hi there, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to talk about various ways of connecting things. In Shelmerdine's text, this is just connection, singular, but I'm adding this S because we're going to be talking about three different types of connection. Initial, which we happen to know already, but not under this term. Postpositive, which we can get into, but it's very much like the initial, but with a couple changes. And then combination, which is familiar from English, but we haven't yet encountered in Greek. Those who have some Latin will be able to kind of recognize this with et, but we'll get there as we get there. Let's talk first about connection itself. What are we talking about here? Connecting. Well, let's use one of our connectors as an example, chi. So I'd call this at some point a conjunction, which again the Latinists will know that that's means together, and then the junction comes from jungo, which can mean kind of yoke or tie. So it's a way of tying things together. Yoke, not as in the egg yolk, or yokel. No, neither of those. But the device that would keep two draft animals, like two cows, together. So we got cow heads, and then that would yoke them together. That's what we're talking about. We're connecting two different things. So what are these things? Chi is connecting what? Well, we could have what? We can have Hethea, the goddess, and what else? The sea. The goddess and the sea helped the Athenians to victory. Something like that would be a good sentence, and we could just drop these equal signs. And what we're saying is we have item A, the goddess, and then item B, the sea, and they're connected. And in this situation, it's an additive. There's A plus B. Now we're talking about both. If we needed a verb for this sentence, we'd need to, if well, whatever the verb would be, it would need to end in usi if it were present, right? Let's say maybe they're destroying the enemy, luusi. This is because now we've got a plural subject because we have one, two, and now we're there. Well, that's great. Let's see, well, what else can we connect? Could I say Hethea, kai, meaning and then say, well, luusi. Let's bring up that word that we just had. Luusin, because it's the end of this sentence. Or is it a sentence? The goddess and they set free? No, that doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Well, this is a noun, first of all, and this is a verb. So those are non-equivalents. They can't be connected. Well, let's try another noun. Let's make it the young man, ton. What's that going to be? Ni an, right? First declension, masculine noun. So the goddess as subject and the man as accusative object. So that's a noun subject, that's a nominative. Whereas this is a noun, true, but it's not the subject, it's the direct object, probably. Maybe an object of a preposition, who knows? And it's in the accusative. These are also not equal. So when we're talking about connecting equivalents, we're not just talking about nouns, verbs. We're talking, well, if they're going to be both nouns, but again, we could make this ha, neania, and this would get a thumbs up, check plus, because what do we have? We have two subjects. The goddess and the young man do something. That would be great. So we're able to connect these single nouns. We, of course, could connect verbs. I am destroying, I'm loosening. Again, let's make this grave so that we're putting it in a kind of context. I'm destroying and you are, what are you doing? You are fleeing, singular. So I am destroying and you are fleeing. Well, these aren't the same persons, but that's fine, because really what we have now is, in English, I loosen and you free. So this is connecting more than just verbs. This is connecting verbal phrases, subject plus verb. That's what we have in both of these cases. It's clearer in English, but that's also what we have going on in Greek. So these are the connections between equivalents that we're talking about. Well, that's great. Now let's actually get to the connectors themselves. Well, we have one of them, kai, already. And kai, we found, meant and. It also can mean even or also, but that's when it's functioning as an adverb, so that's not really adverbially, I'll write in there. That's not really what we're talking about here as a connector, but of course it can do those things. The other thing that we had, the other word, was Allah, which meant but. So and, as we just saw above, would combine two things. If we had one and one, we'd have two. The relationship between one but one, well, that's not mathematical. It's a different relationship. It's not exactly cancellation, but there's a adversarialness about this. There's an opposition. So that's really what characterizes Allah, opposition or maybe adversity. Something that's working against. I am freeing, but I'm also fleeing, but I'm also sacrificing to the goddess. I'm now in a bit of a dilemma. Do I continue the sacrifice over here, or do I flee? These are the questions. These are the initials, and they're called initials because they're at the, well, I'm calling them initials. Shelmerdine doesn't give them a name, because they appear at the beginning of the phrase. So let's do this. I am sacrificing thuo to the goddess, te, thea, but I am fleeing, maybe from the village. Apotes, that's a grave. Apotes komes. So on the one hand, I'm sacrificing to the goddess, so this is our kind of unit A, but I am also fleeing from the village. That's our unit B. In this case, we can think of unit B really starting with Allah and running through komes. So in this situation, Allah is the beginning of this phrase that's coming up. That's why it's initial. If we're going to have kai here, it'd be the exact same thing. It's not the beginning of the entire sentence, but it could be. What if we, I mean, Greek didn't always have punctuation. We don't always need it. Let's put a full stop there. I am sacrificing to the goddess, period. But I am fleeing from the village. That seems strange to us. We don't like this in English with this full stop, but Greeks would be a little bit more comfortable with it, although they'd also be comfortable with no punctuation. The point being, in this case, Allah is working at the beginning of this phrase, and it's a fully standalone phrase. That's why it's initial. And by the way, this kind of speech where we have a lot of thoughts separated and basically equivalent of hierarchy, where we have these, kind of various conjunctions, connectors between. This style of grammar, this style of speech, is called paratactic. Taxis, like taxonomy, having to deal with structure, and this is kind of structured next to each other. This is as opposed to hypotactic, where we have things structured below. If we were going to remember our middle school English classes where we had to diagram sentences, these whole long branches of diagramming, that's a sign of hypotaxy or hypotaxis. Paratactic is going to be, I went to the store and I saw my friend there and he was walking his dog and ... That's paratactic. That's what initial things that we have here, Allah or kai, can do. Well, postpositive can also lead to parataxis, but it's a different kind of setup, and let's talk about that. Well, initial was first. That's easy enough. What does postpositive mean? Well, I give it away here. It means placed after. Latinists will know that post is the preposition for after, and then this is coming from pono, which means to put or to place. So it's placed after. So what does that mean? Well, let us write out the four postpositive connectors that we're going to be working with and explain how they work. So first we have de, and I'm putting acute accents on all these things, but in context, they'll probably go grave. So we had de, gar, oon. Note that that's not a acute, but a circumflex over a smooth breathing. And finally, we'll get to te, which is enclitic. Note that there's no accent here, so I'm not writing anything. So de can mean either and or but. That's a little frustrating because, well, we just showed right here that and but mean very different things. Well, that's true, but this is something that is simply, well, this is almost the embodiment of parataxis. It's not saying one and one as much as one, comma, also and one. This sort of thing where we're just tying things together in this mode. We could use de for basically everything. And Greeks often did. De is one of the most frequently used particles, these conjunctions that are appearing because it's so versatile. We can do so much with it, and it's very neutral in meaning. Gar, on the other hand, means for or because, and that's a much stronger meaning. That's our first causal relationship that we've learned in Greek so far. So we can put that in a sentence and understand what it means a little bit more, but then we also have therefore, which is somewhat cause in the opposite direction. I think, therefore I am. I am because I am thinking. We can see that these work somewhat in different directions, but doing somewhat of the same thing, gar and And te simply means and, but it's a little bit more complicated and can do different things. It can actually really work in combination a lot, but we'll get to that soon. So let's scroll down, forget about combination for a little bit, and what we're going to do is put de to use. So let's take one of the, well, I guess this example again. I am sacrificing to the goddess Te Thea, and I am fleeing from the city, well, or the village. We can just leave it, and I am fleeing. So we had Allah or Kai, that worked. Here, if we wanted to say, well, no, let's put back the prepositional phrase, apotes comes. So we remember from right here that we're starting a phrase here, and if we had something that was initial, it would go right here, Kai, Allah, great. But we have something that's postpositive, that's placed after. So that means instead of being position 1 in the sentence at the very beginning, it needs to be position 2. So we need to put something else to kind of go ahead and fall in there. There'll go. And now we can put de. I'm sacrificing to the goddess. Maybe there's a period there, maybe not. And I am fleeing from the city. Well, then we could replace this with these other things. Gar. I am sacrificing to the goddess for, because I am fleeing from the city. So maybe you need the goddess to protect you on your travels, or you're already in the dire straits if you're fleeing, so that's why you're sacrificing. Well, that would make sense. And then we could try the causal situation the other way. It would mean something different, but it also might apply. I am sacrificing to the goddess, therefore I am fleeing from the city. Well, this might be something that others could infer, but anyway, what we're seeing is we're using all of these postpositives in this second position after theogo. Good. Well, let's tackle te, which could work fine here, but let's talk about how that can work in combination. So we're going to find a number of things that work in combination in Greek, and what we're combining is multiple connectors. So the most simple will be to repeat the initial that we've already seen. Kai, thuo, kai, theogo. I am sacrificing, and I am fleeing. Well, what do we do with this initial kai, and what does it mean? Well, Greek listeners will hear this initial kai, and they might think, well, that could mean even or also. But if there's nothing back here to connect it with, they might also think, hey, let's keep on looking down and down the line, or just waiting for somebody to pronounce this, and see if there's another chi. As soon as that expectation is fulfilled, we say, bingo, we've got two things coming up. Item 1 after the first chi, and item 2 after the second. And then in English, we could do the same thing by saying both. I guess in English we might need to pull this out, but I both sacrifice and I flee. Or maybe I both sacrifice and flee. So both sets up this expectation that, hey, we're going to get two things here. We're going to get two equivalents that are connected. We could just say I sacrifice and flee, and in terms of substance, that doesn't really change what's going on at all. This both really is just an indicator of what's coming on. And this is what kai is doing here. Kai thuo, kai theogo. Alright, well for what we're going to do next, we're going to need something with articles. So let's say the young man, hoeneanias, and then, let's see, it's going to be maybe his sailor friend. So ho nautes. So we have the young man and the sailor, and they're going to do something. Well, it doesn't really matter what they do. Let's just make it ... So we can do exactly what we just did. Kai, kai, both and. So let's call that option number 1. Option number 2 is going to involve changing one of these kais into te, namely the first one. So what do? Well, we have te, but that's enclitic. It can't go at the beginning of the sentence. That's why it's postpositive. So what we're going to have to do there is take a ha and then put the te right after it. Well, it is enclitic, and this was proclitic. That meant it had no accent, but could take one if it was given one. And that's what te does. It gives this acute accent to the ha. So ha, te, and then neanias. And then simply kai, ha, nautes. So what this te is doing is the same thing as this kai. Early on in the sentence, we're signaling that, hey, we're going to have a 1 and 2. We're going to have a both and situation. And both of these, tellingly, can be translated as both A and B. So both the young man and the sailor, both the young man and the sailor. But then we can also reduplicate this te. We can do a double te rather than using a kai. So here we have ha te, just like that, neanias. And then again, if we put a te here, that's second to this. I mean, we can do that, within a sentence, but it's not postpositive within its own clause, which has kind of been starting right with that kai so far. Let me darkly suggest those new clauses of which this was initial. Now we're going to have to start that clause and put the te second. So again, let's hide that, kind of seeing just briefly, just hardly, that we are working with a different, that we're now in a different kind of phrase, a different unit. So then we'll do the same thing, ha, and then te, and that enclitic will put the accent on this proclitic, so then we have ha, te, nautes. Good. That's great. Let's do number 4. What have we done? We've had kai, kai, ha, kai, te, kai, te, te. Well, now we can do another kind of version of te, kai, but here we're going to delay that te to right here. Te, kai, nautes. Well, first things first, let's deal with this enclitic. So this is going to want to put an acute accent right here. Can we do that? Well, unfortunately, we have this acute here, which has already taken us up a pitch. So now ni, and then we can't further go as. so we can't accent this, it stays the same. So this enclitic functionally doesn't add an accent anywhere. So ha neanias takai nautes. The young man, both the young man and the sailor. So we can extend our kind of angle bracket here to say all of these are being translated the same way, but we've got 4 different ways of doing it. Repeating the kais, repeating the tes, using te and kai, but kind of sending this te forward to be postpositive in what we might, do in square brackets as this first unit of meaning, the young man. So here it's postpositive in both cases. That's good. But whereas this kai, well, let me redraw that. That's exactly where it should be. Was initial. Here it's a little strange because te is not postpositive. You should think that it's really just connecting with this kai and becoming its own kind of super connector, both and in one phrase. Of course, if an accent could be given, it would look back. But te kai is really starting this second unit of meaning, the both. I forgot the. Pardon me, the article there. So the young man and the sailor. Good. So we've got a lot going on with these connectors. Let's do a quick review. We had the initial connectors, kai and ala, we already knew about them. Postpositives were new and had a range of meanings, and or but, kind of neutral te, but gar and un had causal connections, and this te was simply and, but could function in these ways that combine. And note that te was enclitic. Well, we got 2 more to look at before we move on, or maybe 2.5. And so we've been working within the and realm, which is an additive idea, but we could also work in the disjunctive realm, which is the or realm. And that is done in Greek with a unaspirated acute accent a. So be careful, this will often look a lot like a hey, and then imagine a hey with a te, all of a sudden we have an acute with a rough breathing. Well, that's clearly the article a on its own, like this, means or. So we can, or I should say first off that this is initial, so this works just like ala or kai, but it can also do the doubled up kai, the reduplication that we saw in kai. So ha, let's reverse it. Either the sailor or the young man is what we're trying to say. So we could simply do an or here, the sailor or the young man. But if we want to do either or, again, this either simply signaling that we're going to have an or down the line. Either a ha nautes, a ha neanias. There's no disjunctive postpositive equivalent to te. There's no te that means or. We can only work within a. However, te can pair with u. And what this simply means is not and. And what this functions out to mean is neither, and then neither nor when we get into the doubled scenario. So we have u plus te, that te is going to give an accent to the proclitic u, and now we've got, these are written together, it doesn't show it here, as one word, so let me write it a little bit more closely. Ute. So ute ha nautes, to pick up our example, let me write it in one line to keep it clear. So not and, or again, this is meaning neither nor. So neither the sailor nor ute again, the young man, neanias. So this just means simply, if I can get my pen to work. Took a second, but we got it. Let me come in and erase that now. Guess I'm getting up there, just past the 24-minute mark. I think this is a new record for video. So neither the sailor, thanks for bearing with me, y'all, nor the young man. So again, another sort of paired. Not and, not both and, but neither nor. But this is with oo, which we know. But remember that oo had a kind of stepchild, maybe, or a stepbrother, may. And oo was used in the indicative. We saw may was used in the infinitive. So let's come up with the a sentence that would require the infinitive. So I ordered the citizens neither to remain nor to flee. There's some middle path is what this might mean. So I ordered the citizens neither to remain or flee. Well, we'll have our main verb here, I ordered, and then this is going to be our accusative object. But that's also going to become kind of the subject of our phrase that's this command, that's what's going to happen, the neither remain or flee, and then that's where we're going to need a disjunctive connector, and then remain in the infinitive, and then another disjunctive connector. I'm writing these V's because in philosophy a V means or, so some of you already probably knew that and were following along. Others, I don't just like the letter V. It's the disjunctive operator, it means or. And in this case, if we make it negative, that's neither or nor, neither remain nor flee. There are interesting issues of verbal polarity and grammar. This is getting heavy really fast, but let's not get into it. We're already at 26 minutes. Let's move. I ordered. Let's start off with that. So past tense, past indicative augment. Let's make it aorist. Well, getting ahead of myself. Akelosa means I ordered. Akelosa, the citizens, which will be tous, and then politas, the citizens, neither to remain, mete, menen. Remember our infinitive ending there. Mete, nor to flee. Belgain. Good. Complicated, yes? Okay, but we're getting there. So te we knew, and then this is just pairing with both oo and me. That's our newest learning. But then we also had this a, which meant or, but could mean either or when paired. And all this pairing is the different types of combinations we can work. AA was identical to kai kai, both are initial, but then we also had these postpositive and enclitic tes, which could pair with kai or pair with themselves to do these kind of combination expressions. Good. That was a whole lot in one lesson. I'll try not to make the next one go that long, but in a very short span, in just one unit, this was a whole lot to cover. So I hope you enjoyed it and that you were able to stick with me, and we'll see you next time.